2024 is the final battle. They're going after Trump, but if they can get Trump, it means they can get you, they can get me, they can get all of us. He is standing in the way, and that can sound like a campaign slogan, but it's very true. Now we're approaching the most important battle of
we can even the playing field, and then we can discuss unity.
Oh, I forgot to take that down. My bad. Hello, everybody. CaptKyle here, and welcome to the end game. And today we have a really special guest. We've heard from him before, but today we get to see him and we get to talk him and I directly. Arnold, and I do not want to butcher your last name. So, how do you say your last name?
It's Finklea.
Finklea. There we go.
Yeah.
I was thinking that's how it was, but I didn't know if it was silent or not. So I just let you say it. So that's always the best. So and then we have our special superstar Kelly that is with us always. So she's the one that sets everything up, and we couldn't do it without her. So, well, before we get started, we're gonna pray, just as we always do. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for today. Lord, I just ask that you continually watch over us and protect us, and let your discernment just pour into us, because of these times that we need to know the truth, and the truth comes from us, and that truth sets us free. Father, this is a psychological warfare for our minds, and Lord, we know that you have the answers to everything if we just look to you. Father, I thank you for it. I thank you for your direction today as well. Father, we asked you for it. I asked you for it, and you answered as you always do. And Father, I thank you. Lord, I ask for protection for our military, the people that are standing up for their rights and their freedoms all around the world. Father, I ask that you continually watch over President Donald Trump and the people that are around him. Father, we just thank you for a hedge of protection and your angels to encamp about us always. Those things that are seen and unseen, we thank you for it. Lord, we just ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 All right. So we have a wonderful guest today. I'm so excited to finally get to talk directly to Arnold, not through the chat. And it's Arnold, I would like for you to kind of give your background. And I've seen his clearances, I've seen his credentials, and I'm not going to reveal those things. I'm going to let him actually talk about so that the things that we talk about today are actually coming from his firsthand understanding, knowledge, and witnessed some parts. So with that, Arnold.
Well, I thank you, CaptKyle. I appreciate it. And thank you too, Kelly, for setting this up. I'm deeply appreciative and honored to be a part of your program today. Uh, some of you know, I am a 21-year Air Force veteran. Came up through the ranks of once I joined the active military service. I was in nuclear security for about 3.5 years. Did 3 years in D.C. working for two presidents, President Jimmy Carter and then President Ronald Reagan. And then from that point, I cross-trained what they consider from leaving from nuclear security to nuclear command and control and communications. And the whole time I've been in the service, I've never had anything less than a top secret clearance. And as I look back on my pathway from the beginning point to my retirement, I can see where God had orchestrated things and events and my progression the whole time to prepare me for the time and the place that we're in today. Being in nuclear command and control, I had access to nuclear war fighting plans. Got elevated to the point where I was part of putting those plans together as part of a team. We call them operational plans or O plans. Got to see things the normal military person would not see unless you were in a position where you got exposed or had access to it. Part of the, I'll just jump forward here. What got me into the position I am today is the last 7 years of my military service, I had attained enough rank where I was positioned to be part of what they call a black program. That program, I can tell you now, because it was declassified intentionally, well, actually compromised by President Bill Clinton, is called continuity of government. That plan that I came out of, not so much the plan, but the department I walked into, COG, deals with, and most of you notice by now, because you can go to the White House website and you can read about what COG is. It's basically how to survive the nation should we come under a catastrophic attack, whether it be nuclear, chemical, biological, and now cyber. And all the work that I've done in that program was very, very eye-opening experience. Got access and seen things that, like I said, the normal military member would not see, because it is, at the time, it was protected under a black program. Much of it still is, but I'm only going to discuss those parts of it that are unclassified, that you can do your own research in the public domain and discover for yourself. And some of you have already done that. When Derek Johnson came out a couple of years ago and started talking about COG, he was talking at COG from an outsider's perspective, but he did some excellent research, laid a good foundation in the framework from which people could understand what COG was all about. And from my point of view, I work from the inside of that program, got to see and experience a lot of things I wouldn't normally see, some things I care not to show or tell people about, because it's that disturbing. A lot of people have the impression that if you're in the military, you kind of do military things. You don't have exposure to other things that we would normally consider in the civilian side of the house, based, CIA type of things, or FBI, which is an intelligence service as well. Not true. The military mirrors just about everything that the civilian side of the house does as well. That's why in the Q drops, it talks about the military is the only way, because that's the most safeguarded system to conduct a lot of these operations that you're seeing right now that's supporting President Trump. So I had exposure to a lot of that stuff, a lot of the new technology that you're finding out about now. I had an opportunity to see and witness in the research and development stages back when I was still active. Now, I retired in 1996. But before then, and you've probably heard the adage that normally when you start seeing things technology-wise on a civilian side in the general public domain, it's already been researched and developed in the military side 30 to 40 years prior. They've been working on this stuff. So there's a lot of things coming out now that I had an opportunity to see. Now, I haven't seen any of the more recent stuff, like within the last 5 to 10 years, but the stuff you're seeing now, I had an opportunity to see some of that transpire. Along with that program, because it's at the national level, that we had the team that I was with, and there were 3 teams. One originated, or the big office, the main office in Washington, D.C. at the Pentagon. And then the other 2 was one where I live. I live in Omaha, Nebraska, a half a mile from Stratcom, formerly SAC headquarters. And the program that I worked in was right here, the last 7 years before I retired. And the third office, if you will, our sister office, was located in Cheyenne Mountain, Colorado Springs, Colorado. But those are only 3 offices or agencies, if you will, that worked COG, the operational side of COG. There are other lateral agencies that help us, that supported us, but that's the basics. And I ran the special access program where I'm at for the folks in Stratcom here. I managed a special access program for COG. And then I had a counterpart, like I said, in Colorado. And of course, the main office is in Washington, D.C. So with that being said, we had to get threat assessments. When people thought the Soviet Union had fallen, that everything was safe and hunky-dory. Not true. It became worse as far as intelligence gathering. We lost the ability to have human intelligence on scene during the Soviet Union's heyday. When they collapsed, all the different nations or countries went their separate ways, and we lost the ability for a long time, to gather good confirmative intel. But with that being said, the threat just kind of grew. But we always look at the threat at the national level. What could take away or degrade what we call the National Command Authorities? That's the NCA. The NCA is comprised of the President, Secretary of Defense, Joint Chiefs of Staff, and certain members of Congress. But primarily the President to the Secretary of Defense, down through the Joint Chiefs to the combat commanders. That's what we call the National Command Authority. So any threat against the NCA, we were briefed on a weekly basis. We were made aware of, because we have to identify the threats, what could potentially take our system down, i.e., personally, the president, his family, key players within the NCA, whether it be a personal threat or a general military threat, or whatever it happens to be. So we got to look at all that stuff on a weekly basis, had to give briefings and prepare a lot of our operations around the threat. So that was very, very important. It still is today. And so that being said, and I'll give you one example. I told Kelly about this. I can tell you this part of what I did, because it's not classified, okay? But part of my job was to go around and brief certain members of Congress, military, and people in the corporate world to become part of the operation of COG. And like I said before, you can read the basic definitions in the whitehouse.gov website. It explains COG, what it basically is. But people involved in that program had to be approached. They had to be prepared for, because they're going to be supporting the nation in its recovery should we come under attack from those 4 different fields I mentioned earlier. So my job was to go out and prepare these folks, brief them, bring them into the program, you sign NDAs, and we wouldn't tell them anything about the program until we got them in what we call a SCIF, which is a special, a secure conference information facility, a SCIF, and where we can talk the highest level classification, regulations, policies, procedures, whatever, in that SCIF. We couldn't discuss it anywhere else. And they have, different places. A lot of the military bases have a SCIF. So we would let the person know whoever it was, we would get a dossier on them first. And we would know from the time they're born to now, we would let them know, okay, we know everything about you. We've already researched who you are, and the decision was made to bring you into this program. So with that being said, now we know the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's already been discovered. So if the person has some baggage, negative baggage, but they are the expert in the field that we need the support in to rebuild our country, it was not our job to say yay or nay, they can't do it. Our job was to bring them in because they've already been vetted and cleared by other authorities, by other intelligence and law enforcement agencies. If they have baggage with them, we'll deal with that baggage later. But the the highest priority is if the balloon goes up at any time, we have to be able to initialize the recovery effort at that level unhindered by experts that know how to put together and build the entire infrastructure for the nation, not just for their locality, not just for their city or state. So that's the level of importance that this was. So that's what I did for the last 7 years. I know this kind of condensed version of what I did, but it was exciting. A lot of times I had to pray and ask God, what did I get myself into? Because this is stuff that you read about in Tom Clancy novels or watch movies, some of all fear stuff like that. That's the level of stuff that I got into. And it was eye-opening. It was intense at times, can be a little frightening. At points, it can be a little disturbing. Like I said, we got to see things from both a military and civilian point. And some of the stuff that we're seeing now, what's being discussed with the Epstein files and all that kind of stuff, we were privy to that too, because that could be used to compromise members of the National Command Authority, as we're discovering now with some of these presidents were involved. They may have been coerced, they may have done it willingly, but we're finding out through the release of the Epstein files and other documents, specifically through Q, because Q is a foundation for a lot of this intelligence information that a lot of the anons have been able to use as they research and just broaden or widen the net of understanding and knowledge and information to take us where we are today. So you're going to hear me refer to at times a lot of the Q stuff, because a lot of people, when I share this information, say, well, Q says that only less than 10 people know the entire plan. That's correct. But within that gathering of the information to put Q in a position to support President Trump, hundreds of people like myself were involved in an intelligence gathering process from different parts of, if you will, departments like logistically, intel, law enforcement, medical. You have resident experts who were appropriately cleared, even though they didn't have understanding and knowledge of the entire plan. They were part of the building process to get where we are today as part of the Q. And Q is not one person, Q is a group. And it started, and most of you know this, if you're following CaptKyle Kelly for a while, you know that Q originated, and as we understand today, under President John F. Kennedy. And from that point on, military side of the house have been gathering information, waiting for people that could fill this place or replace President Kennedy. And in that process, though, they remain quiet, working behind the scenes, undercover, if you will, gathering information. Very important intelligence information. So I know I've been kind of long-winded and going on, but I just kind of wanted to lay a groundwork for my background. There's a lot more to it, but right now I just want to lay a foundation of understanding going forward. So I hope that helps.
Captain, you're muted. Captain.
So absolutely, it gives the context of how you're speaking to something from firsthand knowledge, as well as the perspective of those things in which you've seen and worked in previously, and that it's not just pie in the sky, and that the things that we have discussed or going to discuss are just speculation, because they're not, they're actuals. And that's the thing that is really important here for you to understand. A lot of people out there are given things from their perspective without actually having the firsthand experience or knowledge of being able to speak to these things. And that actually matters a lot, actually. And so what is a special access program, so that people can kind of understand that? And that's how things are compartmentalized intentionally, as you said, that each one of these experts has their piece to play, and they're the very few that have the entirety of it, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. As you go up, and one thing about the clearances too, I don't know if people understand this, and I did talk to Kelly about that, is that the Q clearance is a clearance that's given by the Department of Energy, not from the Department of Defense, now the Department of War. Most of the security clearances that come through the military side of the house come down through the Department of Defense, through what they call the Defense Investigative Service. These are people who go around and do all the background checks and investigations for folks to get their clearances. However, for a Q clearance, that's given by the Department of Energy. And if you understand the Department of Energy, part of their primary mission is to manage, oversee, report on weapons of mass destruction. And that includes nuclear weapons, biological, chemical, and now cyber. Any system that can be used to take this country down in a massive way, we call a weapon of mass destruction. And the Department of Energy is given that task primarily surrounding nuclear, and biological and chemical were added later. And now more recently, cyber, because we know what cyber can do. If we're attacked cyberly, it can take down a lot of our computer infrastructure as well. So the Department of Energy has been tasked to give those clearances. There's two clearances they actually give. There's just what they call a Q clearance, and then it's what they call an L clearance. Those are the two highest clearances you can have, but it's still broken down. In the special access program, depending on your background and what we need you to accomplish in putting together the overall plan, you may have a Q clearance, but it's compartmented. Say you work in a medical profession, but we need your experience in a nuclear environment as we put together this plan. So you're given that clearance because you have access you may have access to the overall plan. And the fact that you may have access, you have to be appropriately cleared to work in that environment. And I hope if I lose you, just stop me and ask the question and let me know. So that's important. So everything's compartmentalized. And even today, I'm not going to speculate in a lot of things. I don't believe in speculation. I try to keep things as truthful and upfront and factual as possible, and bring receipts. And I'm going to stay in my lane because my background is military intelligence and operations. That's my bread and butter. But when you start talking medical stuff or logistic stuff, I may have some familiarity and general information and how that ties in overall, but that's not my bailiwick. So that's important because that's how the special access program is developed. Only people that have a participative, actionable part in the plan are brought in. They're given the appropriate clearance. You sign your compulsory non-disclosure agreements and other agreements besides the NDAs to let you know that this is serious business. You don't discuss this with anybody outside of your office or outside of the overall plan. Even if you have access, if you don't have a direct activity with it, you're not going to know. Now, you can be in the same office with others. Say Kelly, Capt, and I were in the same office. We could have different parts of that plan and not know what the other one is doing because we don't have the need to know. Right. And that's important too. You got to have the need to know to have access. But the fact that you're in the office working with your brothers and sisters, you still have access because something may happen. They leave a document on their desk and you walk past it and just glance over at it. Now you have access to a document you don't normally work with, but you're protected because you already have the appropriate clearance. but that's how that works. I mean, there's a lot more that goes into it, but that's how it basically works. And when Hillary Clinton was discovered to have all those classified emails on her unclassified server, and a lot of that was special access program material, that is major. That is very major. And of course, if you've been reading the Q drops and done your own research, you understand that Hillary didn't just have it on her server. She was selling SAP material to foreign governments or allowing them direct access to that unclassified server. That is big. That's treason, basically. So I managed that program where I was, and the other two officers did the same thing. The biggest office managed the biggest part of that program as far as SAP. But that's how the special access program works. And you can be in a SAP program even with a secret clearance, because it's just based on the level of activity that you're providing to support the overall plan. If you're doing it from a secret classification, then you only have access within that SAP program to that level. I hope I'm not confusing anybody. So the higher up you get within the SAP program, the more ability you'll have to accessing other parts of the plan. And because my background was intelligence and operations, which is a core product of that plan, I'm looking at all the feeds coming in. I can look at the logistics side, the medical side, transportation, all those plans, all those annexes, if you will, to the overall op plan as they come in and feed the growth and the development of that plan. And as Kat and Kelly always talk about, the plan that was developed that we're seeing unfold before us now had been meticulously, carefully put together. Decades and decades of information going into this plan. And if you understand the principles or the guiding philosophy of that plan, how they composed it, and most folks who are part of the military that are used to building old plans, having access to them, understand three basic principles or groundwork that built to develop a plan. That's game theory, the art of war, and the newest one added to that process is called The Art of the Deal, which is President Trump's book, how he created and conducts his dealings as a multi-billionaire in the real estate department. But a lot of the principles that he used in his book have been added to this plan. And this plan took decades to put together. By saying that you understand that President Trump didn't just go to him one year, hey, we found the guy that can give me the tip of the spear. He was looked at over decades as a person for this time now. And I'll just land there. I hope that helps, Captain.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And that's kind of where, people have to understand that the plan that's being enacted and unfolded before our eyes, there are very few that understand the entirety of it on purpose. And when you have individuals out there that are trying to piece it together and I got you and I got you this and so on and so forth, in reality, all they're doing is looking at a component of a much larger plan itself and do not understand that part of it and how it fits into the overall puzzle. And that's why it's so important for us to stay at the 40,000 foot mark so that you can continually see the lay of the entirety of the plan and not get tunnel vision, because they're trying to always give you tunnel vision, put you on this one thing like a dog with a bone kind of attitude. And when that happens, you lose perspective of the entire operation that's going on. And so with the way that things are unfolding right now, with us separating ourselves from the imperialistic point of view, meaning that the control from the royals, from the monarchy, and from the church, so to speak, with the Roman Catholic Church and how Rome never fell, and how that's all bringing us into a new, complete world ideology. That's important because it was always about their control and their plan, and how we are, and how Donald Trump, with his national security that he put out last, I think it was in October, November, whenever he put his strategy out. Basically, you really guys really need to read that entirety, because it talks about Iran, it talks about everything that's going on right now, and to be able to understand how this plan is kind of going through step by step and actually orchestrating each individual piece of it. And you can't put the cart before the horse. So it was really important to basically lay the groundwork in our Western Hemisphere, which was under the now Trump doctrine, basically, instead of the Monroe doctrine, and then basically taking us into the Middle East, that was formally put together as a underpin for what's going on right now through the Abraham Accords, people. That was so important to lay that foundation and what it basically started out to be, because it was always meant to grow. And this is what I'm going to, kind of lay this for you to take and expand upon all that, right? Is that the Abraham Accords were to basically set up a financial trading partnership with the Middle Eastern states back to Jerusalem and with the Jewish state, and to bring some sort of a financial peace between those countries. And we have to understand that, like, Saudi Arabia was not a part of that yet, but it was always intended to be. And that was really a fundamental attack that happened on October, that Saudi Arabia was about to join that right before Hamas actually did what they did. That was intentional, people, through the deep state proxy, which is what Iran, to create chaos and terrorist acts in the Middle East. So when we go back to the first Gulf War, when Bush put his Middle Eastern alliance together, even though Israel was being bombed by Scud missiles from Iraq and everything that was going on, the only way that Saudi Arabia and those Middle Eastern countries would actually become a part of that coalition and to stand with the United States is that Israel had to stand down. Period. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And how are we seeing that change today? Those Middle Eastern alliance, the Persian Gulf states, countries are all coming together to support and back each other. And they're allowing that backing to join in now with Israel. And we have to go back and understand something, that when Donald Trump went on his capitulation tour, Israel capitulated. So anybody wants to talk about Netanyahu's in control and he ain't pulling shit other than what he's being told. Okay? This is what you need to understand. But there was a country that never capitulated, and that was Iran. They're the ones being dealt with right now. And when this is what's happening, all of those Gulf countries have come together in the full backing of not only the alliance, but to eliminate that evil, which is the deep state proxy of that imperialistic plan, which has been Iran. So, with your understanding, how did we deal with, or why did we deal with in the way where we went through Venezuela, Cuba, Mexico, and now we're dealing with Iran? How does that all come together in your perspective, Arnold?
Oh my gosh, boy, Cap, you lay down a good foundation. There's so many different directions, but I guess the key point is, as you said, it had to happen the way that it happened. Some of the Q posts refer to it that in succession, North Korea, then Iran, and we know Israel has been reserved for last, and no discussion about Israel. But in order to cut the tentacles of the deep state to all the countries that you named, when Trump went on his capitulation tour, first, he went to those key nations that were integral in taking down the deep state, their financial arm, their human trafficking networks. And people are finding out now that Venezuela, Iran, of course, we knew that Iran, but Venezuela, Cuba, they were all involved in that process. Money laundering, human trafficking, drug running, the whole deal. And as you said earlier, when you're at that 40,000 foot level and you get a better perspective or a broader perspective of what's going on, you also discover that the plan that's being run by President Trump and Q is a global plan. And that's why things have taken a little bit slower than people would have liked. That's why the processes and the actions taken had to be methodical, have to follow constitutional law, because that's key. Everything that President Trump, the Q team, the White Hats, including us, have helped and put forth had to follow constitutional law. Because one of the things that President Trump has always said is we have to restore people's faith in the law, in the justice system, in law and order. He's a law and order president, and everything he's done has been according to law and order, has been according to the Constitution. And whenever they came after him to say, oh, you can't do this, and we're invading countries, and why are you doing this to Venezuela, and you're going and arresting this president, all this kind of stuff, a lot of that's from the deep state, because they don't want that to happen anyway. We're cutting them off at the knees. But a lot of that also comes from people who don't have a foundational understanding about how that all is integrated. So through the Abrahamic Accords, through that process of bringing those nations in the Middle East together to join as a compact, to eventually joining with Israel to safeguard the area, to bring peace and stability back to the Middle East, was very, very important. But part of that process was going out to the other unknown countries, if you will, like Venezuela, Cuba, and other South American countries, and some over in Europe, how they played in it too, because they were like feeding ponds for that corrupt deep state system. Ukraine's part of that as well, and others. So, man, this is, Capt, I'll tell you, it would take us a month. I mean, you did an excellent job laying it out. And for people coming on now that don't have that kind of foundation, would take months to lay that groundwork, that foundational work, for them to even understand what you and I and others, part of this broadcast, are talking about. They don't have that foundational basis as far as, and they don't have a frame of reference. So a lot of this stuff looks chaotic. It looks confusing. The interplay, the interactions between what the White Hats through President Trump and Q and our military are doing, they don't have any of that kind of foundation. Everything looks chaotic. But that's okay too, because that's also incorporated into the plan. A lot of the military operations you're seeing going on today of manipulating a deep state out of all these other countries that have been screaming and yelling, I'm talking about the people, not the governments, for freedom, for justice. A lot of that has been going on to the point where people are now starting to put the puzzle pieces together, as you said earlier. They're taking back, okay, this is confusing me, but they're finding resources like Captain Kyle and Kelly and the other positive groups, podcasts, spaces of people who they can trust to get information from. And that's very, very key, very, very important. To develop that kind of trust and foundational understanding, you have to go to people who are telling you the truth. And the way you find out about it is you know when somebody's trying to run a game on you. If you're aware, if you just using your common sense, your critical thinking skills, you know when somebody's trying to run a game on you, or they're coming and telling you information, but not bringing the receipts. And thank God for you, Captain Kyle, because you guys, Kelly and the admins, you guys bring receipts. You bring the proof. You're not just talking out of the side, as I told Kelly yesterday, talking out of the 5 orifices in your body. You're bringing receipts. You're not just dropping information and leaving people hanging. You tell them where to go. You tell them how to research the information and how to prove everybody that brings you information. They have to be proven, because you can't take anything from anybody that's what they're saying. They have to bring proof. They have to bring evidence that you can research on your own and feel comfortable in your understanding of it. So yeah, all this interaction that we're seeing taking an accelerated pace now. It's happening almost on a daily basis. And as the Q post talks about, what we're experiencing is the greatest intelligence release of information ever attempted by the military. They're dumping a lot of intelligence information, classified information, over into the civilian side to help folks understand exactly what's going on. Now, the deep state, through their apparatus to the mainstream media, through the Democratic Party and rhinos, they're trying their best to thwart that, but they can't stop it now. The snowball has gotten too big, coming down the hill too fast. There's no way they can stop what is coming. So as we watch the interplay going on with the war in Iran, at the same time, there are intelligence operations going into the deep underground military bases and underground facilities, rescuing children. That's going on in a major scale too. And then you got the law enforcement, Justice Department, working with our allies over in Europe, over in South America, in those countries, exposing and dealing with those deep state assets and those governmental countries as well. And I hope I'm making sense. There's so much and that's my understanding. I've seen it happen. I've seen a lot of the operational planning go into that. And this stuff, it's mind-boggling. It can be really daunting to try to understand it all. And when you don't have a foundation, like Kelly and you, Capt, have, or other folks like us that have that kind of foundation, you're going to be confused. You're going to be lost. And that's why it's important that when you find a space or a podcast like this one, where you're getting the right information, it's being carefully broken down in bite-sized pieces, which I also love about you, Capt and Kelly. You guys break information down to bite-sized pieces so people can follow along and understand and take their time enjoying the food that you're placing before them on the table, on the dining room table. Some of it's hard to swallow, and I understand that. Others is easily digestible, but it's connective tissue to help you with the bigger pieces that's hard to swallow. But yeah, all this interaction, all this interplay that we're seeing happening before our eyes, history is being written of what you're a part of, and it's very, very important that we don't lose our sight. Don't get so caught up in the minutia that you miss out on what's really going on, and that's very important.
So, Kelly, if you would, today, after we finish with this call, repost the information from the Joe post and everything, explaining the beginnings of the Q movement, and then also the documentaries that were done to set the groundwork of the deep state from the ladies.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could put those out so that exactly what we're talking about for the newer people, that gives them a foundation of what they're seeing in the world right now. And then also we can post the Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Yes. And we'll do that one. It's an audio, so you can listen to it at any time. But whenever you listen to the Sun Tzu Art of War, what it does is it gives you a perspective of how things are being presented militarily and to the public in a perspective that is, it's already done, because it actually is. Whether you realize it or not, it's already done. Do we have to go through some of the motions? Yes, we do. But it's like already having a preset plan, and it's just got to go through its motions. And so I've said this many times, that when President Donald Trump gives us an option, or he gives another person an option, it's a win-win strategy. It's not a win-lose strategy. It is a win-win. We're going to win this way. Oh, that didn't work. Well, we're winning this way anyway. And that's what I'm talking about. So it is a win-win scenario. It's been gamed out, and it's been done through this over decades, along with supercomputers operating it and quantum computers that have taken it to an entirely new fundamental direction, along with the abilities that we have used through technologies that we've talked about here on this channel, with Looking Glass and other apparatuses that they have been using and operating for a long time. And when they go in to do an operation, basically it's already fundamentally set on how it's going to go down. Is there going to be some bumps along the way? Absolutely, but they have been taken into account and considered in their entirety. And you want to minimize those as much as possible by actually looking through all of those possibilities and put them into a actionable account going forwards. And so, like right now with us in this Iran conflict, you need to very much be careful about the mainstream media, the narrative, and how they are trying to present something that is not so, to basically what they're trying to do, and this is what Iran is trying to do, is trying to create as much chaos and as much panic and discord by attacking all of their neighbors, that the stomach of the Americans for war and bloodshed would be to pressure the administration, pressure the military to stop what they're doing. That ain't going to happen. And it has completely backfired. And you're getting to see that. But when you have these Democrats and these leftists, it's amazing that you have Iranians that have been exiled from their country and different countries around the world, not just here in America, but are actually celebrating what we're doing right now and actually grateful for what we're doing right now. And then you can look across the street on the other side and have these cuckoo, woke ass, white, liberal women nut jobs that are basically trying to condemn what we're doing, and they have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. And it's like, where in the hell are you even coming from? Those, in my opinion, are a part of the matrix, a part of the NPCs, and they're a part of the programming for the continued control mechanism that the controllers have already lost. So don't look at it as in that you're trying to save those people, because there's really nothing that you can do with that. And so it's not a big deal. You have to really take a step back and look at things through the actual perspective of that there are those that are a part of the plan, good and bad. And that part of the plan itself is the exposure of the system. That's all it is. It's an exposure of the system that has been controlling you since birth that's being exposed. And I'm going to read something. And this is what kind of started this narrative today, was when I said that I never go into these with a perspective. I don't. And this morning, I was like, Lord, I have absolutely nothing. Where do I start this conversation? Because there's so much going on. And I was like, if you don't tell me, I don't know what I'm going to do. I really don't. And so hours later, it was just like right before, I'm talking just a couple hours before we started, Arnold. Kelly sends me a link and says, hey, check this out. So I look at it, and sure enough, that is exactly what the Lord wanted me to bring into this talking point, this perspective for us to be able to begin with. And I had absolutely nothing, zero. And then after I got it, I called Kelly back and said, you know what, Kelly, God used you to send that to me. And she's like, normally I don't do that, but I felt like I needed to send it to you for some reason. And it's like, this is just confirmation that the Spirit, if you use discernment and you allow the Spirit to lead you and guide you through every action of your day, He will, guaranteed. You have to just follow it, though. Follow your gut. And I called her, told her about it, and told her that this is what I was going through. And she's like, I don't normally do that. I'm like, I know, but I'm just wanting you to see that this is how the Spirit works, because she sees it all the time. And I always bring acknowledgement to it. And it's like, when you're wanting answers, I know one that knows, and it isn't me. Not that I don't know things, but your specific answer comes from the one that knows everything. And that's the one you should be just going to for your discernment and
Amen.
everything else. This is a
Amen.
spiritual awakening, more so than the physical stuff. It is actually a spiritual awakening, so that you can come back into a relationship with your creator, your father, your mother, whoever you want to relate that to, because it's a relationship. And God is all to everyone. He's your mother, father, brother, sister, cousin, uncle, whatever you need him to be. He's everything, all in one. And I have that relationship as my father. That's why I say it. And
Amen.
others, they have it at whatever they are. And that doesn't make you wrong. Period. It doesn't. It's your relationship. It's not mine. And I want to encourage you to water that, take care of it, and foster it, so that it can be something that just you waking up in the middle of your day. It's like, Lord, I don't know what we're doing today, but why don't you just show me what you have for me today? And then start going, because that's how God operates. Is he directs the steps of those that are moving, not those that are sitting on the couch go, Lord, I'm waiting on you. Waiting on the Lord is not passive, it is active.
Yes.
That's what so many do not understand. Um, and
Captain, would
so,
you like me to read that to
yes,
everyone?
would you read that
I
for
sure
us?
will. Okay, so just to give you a little background of what was going on with me, it's been so incredibly cold here. Haven't been able to get out a lot this winter. And today and yesterday, it's been gorgeous. And I actually got outside in my bare feet for the first time in a while. And I had my phone with me, and I was sitting there just looking through X, and this post popped in front of me, and it's not from somebody I had known about and had followed. And I read it, and I was like, and then I went into the comments, and this account was just so good at like answering a lot of the shills that were coming after him. And normally I would just post it on Captain's channel, but it just dawned on me. I said, Captain needs to take a look at this. So I sent it to him and I said, Captain, what do you think of this perspective? And he says, just give me a bit. And then he told you the rest. Okay, so here it is. And I will post it on Captain's channel with the link so that you can follow this person. The account is called Unseen One. And this is the post. The doomers and panicans want you to believe this is World War III. The chances of that are very slim. The facts are that Iran has a finite amount of missiles and drones. They have zero air defenses left. Their ability to build more drones and missiles is low. They have no navy left. Their leadership is discombobulated. I love that one. Their army is being bombed in their barracks. When their missiles and drones run out, which they will, aside from possible terror attacks by cells, they have zero ability to protect any force outside of their borders. Their allies have abandoned them. They have pissed off their neighbors. It's basically a fight of
Attrition.
attrition at this point, and there is no possible way for them to win that fight short of a lack of political will from the Trump admin. The only question is how much damage they can do before they run out of missiles and drones. The strait will remain open, the oil will continue to flow, and if the people take to the streets, it ends quicker. Iran has no allies that can help besides their terror network, where Hamas is dead man walking, and Hezbollah looks is like their time is short. It can't pull any more countries in to help them. In fact, it's doing the opposite. They can pull others into it against them. In other words, the likelihood of this expanding outside the region into a world war is about zero. The likelihood of this lasting long is about zero. The likelihood of a U.S. occupation force is about zero. The only hope Iran has at this point, and this is important, folks, please listen to this part, because this pertains to how you absorb the information you're seeing. The only hope Iran has at this point is their propaganda network and the left's propaganda network media, along with the doomers and the panicans on the right. They need Americans to turn against the war and bring political pressure on Trump admin to end the war. That is their only hope to survive with any amount of force left. The regime may be able to keep power over their people, but their ability to promote their Islamic revolution for a long period of time will be about zero. In my opinion, I doubt they survive, and the Iranian people will finish them. But if not, the regime's ability of sowing constant chaos in the region is coming to a close. But if you want to believe the doomers and worry about things for no reason, you can. As always, think as you will.
So, with that, I wanted to read one of the actual posts that was in that kind of gives a summary to that attrition, which is not very good. Day one, February the 28th, they shot off 350 ballistic missiles, major barrages across Israel, UAE, Bahrain, and Qatar. Day two, they shot only 175, reduced due to Israel strikes. Day three, they shot 120, further declining. Day four, down to 50, low dozens amid degraded capabilities. And this is across the IDF, UAE, and their other Mossad, Open Intelligence. They have rapidly dropped their intel basically from their peak. So it's showing a rapid decline. And where basically Secretary is saying that we're basically today in uncontested airspace. What does uncontested airspace actually means? It means that, dude, if you want to fly a freaking light airplane over the city of Tehran and start throwing missiles out the window of a open cockpit World War II plane that's got no guns on it and just dropping them over the side, you could do that. That's what uncontested means. There ain't nothing for them to do at all. But this is even more significant than what is being presented here, is that in Venezuela, they had set up through their proxies of Russia and China their best military technologies of their defense systems, their radar systems. And they had done the same thing in setting up those systems in Iran. Now, the difference between Venezuela and Iran is that Iran did have a ballistic missile program, and they had a lot of capabilities that Russia and China was using as a test bed for if they ever came in contact with the United States directly. Well, we're going to see how they really work. I mean, we say how good we're supposed to be, and we tout our excellence, which they like to toot their horn all the time about how they could take down anybody and everybody. But in reality, you got to see just how good they didn't work against our ability to go in there and do exactly what they did, which is pretty much anything at will that they wanted to. Um, and so this basically stopped the idea that China could just breeze on over to Taiwan and not have to be concerned. Because why? Because basically Japan and Taiwan and our allies that are right there still that are protecting it actually has all of that weaponry and technology that they can't deal with. Even though our focus is somewhere else, they were like, I don't think this is going to be a good idea. So if you listen to some of their rhetoric, though, I have actually that from China saying that Iran, if we were to go in there and attack Iran, then they would be able to destroy Israel in like one day. And then a couple of days after that, we'll just go take Taiwan. No big deal. And they can just take down the big Satan and little Satan, and we'll just continue moving forward. Well, it didn't work out the way that they thought. And so these Chinese individuals that are basically mouthpieces are eating crow really, really badly. And so it's funny because these influencers, as well as we're talking about military people that have made these statements for years of how good their weapons and how good their technology is really crap in all reality. Now, the only thing that has been able to have any kind of success, but limited, very, is their guided ballistic missile that they have, which is I can't remember the name of it right off the top of my head. It's the one that they shoot up into the stratosphere and then it drops and it's basically pulling like, anywhere from Mach 10 to almost Mach 20. It's total speed, change direction, so on and so forth. Those are the limited things that have actually got through because of the short range. It's really difficult to be able to get an actual guidance from it after the detection, because we're talking about just minutes of from it when it launches to where it's actually on impact, because we're talking about the speed of this thing and the short distance that it's actually having to travel. But those capabilities are almost null anymore. And when you're looking at the overall perspective, it's setting it up to where the deep state was using the proxy of Iran to basically do these terror organization outcomes. And you also have deep state in Russia. You also had the deep state in China. And the alliance, basically, of Xi, Putin, and all these Modi, and so on and so forth, they're also dealing with eradicating their deep state in their countries and proxies, just as we are here. So when Arnold talked about this a while ago, that this is a global operation and it is a global extraction of all of the evil, this is our opportunity. This is our one chance. Just like Trump told the Iranian people, this is your one chance to actually take back your freedom. We've said many times in my conversations, and Arnold and Kelly, you can confirm this, that these conversations that I've had with Lieutenant Colonel Bossi over the last couple of years has been specifically that when the opportunity presents itself, because it's going to, that the people of that country and nation must get involved in actually reclaiming their patriotic freedom for themselves. We cannot do it all. The military cannot do it all. You have to get involved. And that's what's important right now, is that he's calling specifically them to actually take to the streets, and we got your back. Now, are people going to potentially still die from that? Absolutely. We're in a war. We're not in a war like is being presented, like you tanks and all this other kinds of stuff. We are in a war for the hearts and minds of people and their sovereignty. And when he's calling for them to take back their sovereignty, that's exactly right. And we've talked about this, and you guys can back me up on this as well, that if Trump ever tells us here in the United States to take to the streets to take back our country, that's exactly what he means. And it has not been done. And it probably won't be done that way in the United States, because we don't have a dictatorship evil death squad that's actually operating here in the United States. And that would play into the deep state's hands if we actually did that. Look what they tried to do with January 6th, right? And I was there. I participated in that. So go fuck yourself, deep state. I was there. And it was nothing like it was presented to the people from the mainstream media. It was a complete setup, because my wife and I actually saw where they were
Oh, yep,
busting in.
freezing up.
They're attacking me specifically. I've been
I
getting
saw
attacked.
you just froze completely up.
Yeah,
Hey,
you're
Captain,
dropping bombs,
I have a
Captain.
I have a question for you guys. That something that just recently popped up brought to mind. Okay, so and I understand, Arnold. We talked about speculating, but sometimes it's just like kind of looking at things and reviewing the possibilities of why they happened, and go like, especially when things start happening now, that you think back to why did that happen then. Okay, so do you remember back when they supposedly left all the equipment in Iraq, when the fake Biden pulled them out and all the equipment was left
Oh, in
behind?
Afghanistan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now the um the prime minister of Iran, the deputy foreign prime minister, Ismail Bashai, however you say his name. He was recently in an interview, and he's all mad because he's all big mad because he says, under these conditions, would any sane Iranian reach out to the United States? We were betrayed. Diplomacy was betrayed. And then they're saying that Bibi let it slip out that Trump wanted to do this from his first, what do you call it? His first term. Okay. So, in other words, he's trying to say that it was a sham that they ever wanted to negotiate with them. And Trump has always said he's never going to reveal anything he's going to do in war, right? I mean, we remember that speech. He's not going to be telling them what he's going to be doing. So they're just big mad because they got caught off guard. But going back to the stuff that was left in Afghanistan, and I don't know if this would relate or not, but it does tie into what Captain was talking about, which is Trump is trying to, and he has, and Trump spoke about that in that famous Davos speech about each country having their own sovereignty, right? And fighting for themselves. So now the Kurds, the Iraqi, the Kurds, where are they from? They're from,
They're on the Turkish Iraq border. The
well,
little
yeah. So
the little
they're being given and trained to go into ground combat in Iran. So I'm wondering if any of this equipment was left behind for this purpose, so that these people would be able to now, instead of our guys going boots on the ground, because nobody wants that, right? Was that like the plan all along, to help them defend themselves?
Well, that's a good question. I would say historically, under President Trump, that seems to have been the case. When you go back and look at some of the other actions that he's taken, like I said, he doesn't, like he said, he doesn't broadcast any military operations that are going to be coming forward or being conducted. You're not going to know anything about them until after the fact, right? President Trump has been adamant about that fact, and so has the Secretary of War. But it doesn't mean that. I'll give you a couple examples. People think that we just haphazardly jumped into this thing with Iran. In a couple of weeks, we're going to go and
Yeah.
bomb Iran, right? It's been planned for a long time. We already have, and some of you understand this, we already have boots on the ground, i.e., intelligence assets on the
Yes.
ground, right? Already preparing for the conflict. That's always been the case. But a lot of times people don't have that foundational understanding, don't have that background. They're going to think otherwise. But that's okay. I think the equipment that was left behind was already foresaw. We knew this was going to happen under Biden. They already planned for it, so that those thousands of pieces of equipment, totaling about $85 billion worth of equipment that's left behind. Some of that equipment will find its way, or has found its way, to help the new allies that have been formed under President Trump's administration, to do the very thing that you just mentioned, going in and helping countries relieve themselves of all the deep state assets that have been controlling those countries. That all that will come out in the wash when the after action reports, when this conflict is over and the dust settles on a global scale. You'll begin to find out information that was never before told or released about. There were back channel deals, there was back channel actions taking place with our allies, with allies that came on board that we still publicly don't know anything about. Well, I say publicly, that's true. But if you've been following the Q drops and doing your own research, you'll figure out, there's some interesting things happening behind the scenes that we're not being fully made aware of. As Captain mentioned earlier, there's a lot of things, actions taking place that we don't know anything about, that
Right.
you're not going to be told until after the fact. So on that part of speculating, I speculate, but more so on historical basis than just kind of reasoning things out. But that's a very good question. It's a very good point that you're making, Kelly. That there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes that we know nothing about. Why certain things have happened the way they have, and it's all good. As Captain said, it's a win-win. We don't got to stay at that 40,000, 50,000 foot level to capture most of it. There's still some things we're not going to know, they're not going to reveal till after the actions have taken place. But it's all good. It's a win-win. And if you don't mind, let me add just two more things I want to say earlier. Captain, you must have a camera where I'm sitting at, because you were nailing some things. Gosh, I was like, okay, I wrote this down, and there you go, saying the very thing I just wrote down to share. You've been right on top of it, so thank you for that. I just want to mention two things. One, for people listening in, the level of your understanding about how everything is going is determined about how far up or down, you want to pursue it or do your research or want to understand or know. At the level that you stop is going to be the level of your understanding, because there's things happening much deeper than your understanding or much higher than your understanding. I hope that makes sense. So you have your own free will. God and we will never violate your free will. The Q post and the drops and all the information coming out is for you to willingly, on your own, purposely pursue it or not pursue it. It's up to you. But it's only depending on how much you can stand, because there's a lot of dark stuff coming out now that's really shaking people at the core of their being. And so you determine how deep you want to go in this or how high you want to go. I hope that makes sense. And as far as the plan goes, the pace of the plan being unfolded is determinant on how our adversary responds. If we take actions and we see them to respond in a positive way that we expected, we can accelerate the plan. If they do things that we would expect them to do, but we've already factored in that we'll have to slow the plan down a little bit to incorporate the actions that we've already planned for. And that's the pace of which we see the plan unfolding. And I hope that makes sense as well. That's a part of game theory, and the art of war. So there's a lot of factors that play into this, but it's important. It's not going to go as fast as people would like. And that's where the biggest cry has been about people saying, well, once people find out all this stuff has been happening, they want immediate action. Well, it's going to go at the pace of the plan determined by President Trump, his administration, and the White Hats. And it's based on the response of our adversary. We're still going to win. We're not losing this at all. We've already won it, as Captain said earlier, but we still have to go through the process. We're never going to go around this process. We have to go through it. So, and that's very, very important. But the pace and speed of which we go through this process determines how our adversary responds. So I just wanted to share that as well. And then one last thing. We, as Captain said, man, you were nailing some things, Captain, been right on point. That the countries that we're involved in helping free today, their citizenry is 50% of that operation. We can do only so much militarily, but the people who we're helping to liberate have to take action as well. And it's no different from us. Q's always admonished us and told us, hey, this is a military operation, military is in control, but 50% of this operation within the United States has to happen by the involvement of the U.S. citizen, of the American people, of the Patriots. We have to become involved. And that was a very, very large discussion early on from the Q post and from what President Trump is saying. It's very, very vital. It's absolutely vital that the civilian population, the presidents, the people who want to see law and order, justice returned, has to become involved at every level in our society. And it's no different for any other country. So all we're doing is telling them, hey, just follow our lead, see what we're doing here. You have to do the same thing. It's very important if you want to see freedom and justice for your own nation. And I'll just land there. Thank you.
Yeah, they have to participate. There's a participation that everybody must take into an account. And things are going to be set up. All the hard, so to speak, lifting is going to be done. And it's about people taking ownership of their freedom, their sovereignty, and their future. And that's what's so important about being participants in it. And no matter where you stand in it, no matter what country you're in, you're always going to be drawn in at that specific time to participate in your freedom. And that's what's so important. You can't put the cart before the horse. So if you get out there beforehand, well, it's going to be a little difficult for you. They will call when it's time, just like he specifically called for the Iranian people. I got your back. It's time for you to hit the streets. They were already hitting the streets, showing that that's what they truly wanted. And they were willing to suffer the consequences of that, which basically it's having their blood spilled for their salvation and their freedom. And that solidifies it, that there's no greater sacrifice than giving yourself to your fellow man or your country for humanity's sake. And that's what they were doing, saying enough is enough. We're not going to take this anymore. The worst thing you can do is kill me, so be it. I will be a martyr for that cause. And it's like when we have our military, they do this all the time. Our firefighters, they do this all the time. The law enforcement, they do this all the time. When shit hits the fan, they're going to it, not away from it. And that's a special kind of person that does that, right?
Amen.
And
Amen.
there's a consequence for that individual as well. They live with PTSD. Their lives are really difficult, and the struggles that they have on a personal level are things that most people could never understand at all. And it doesn't just affect them, but it infects their entire families, their wives, their kids, their brothers, their sisters. They all go through these difficulties too, in their own way. And there's a cost to freedom.
Yes.
It's not free. And just like I can't remember if it was Benjamin Franklin, I said that it's always about having to eventually stand back up for your freedom. I'm paraphrasing that there's going to be some spilled blood for that freedom, because it's not free. And one of the main parts of our Constitution are very important. It's the first two: the ability to have the freedom of speech and to be able to protect that freedom of speech, which is number two. Those two key points are the pinnacle for our foundation of our Constitution. And when you look at other countries around the world that have lost that ability for free speech, what did they always do before that? They took away their ability to protect their own selves from a tyrannical government.
Right.
It's not about hunting. It's not about personal protection, even though those are parts of it. It's really about having the ability to stand up against a tyrannical government that comes to take complete control over you. Because it's like, you look at Mexico, they're not able to have weapons. They're public. And the criminal, oh, who is that? That's the cartel. Well, guess what? They don't follow the rules and laws. They're the ones that actually have that. So look at every city in the United States where we have the Second Amendment of being able to have and bear arms. Those cities that have the most tyrannical, crazy ass gun laws are the ones that are the worst in basically criminal activity and gun violence. That doesn't even make sense under their ideology. But the reason it is because the criminal don't give a shit about your laws. They don't care. They're going to have them. That's why they're criminals. But it takes away the law-abiding citizen's ability to protect themselves, and that changes the perspective. It's like having a soft target. A soft target is anywhere where they have no ability to protect themselves. If a gunman shows up, then they're kind of screwed. It's like what happened on 6th Street in Austin this past weekend. This was a lone actor. It wasn't a sleeper cell, which we haven't even got to that. There are sleeper cells. They are here. And we do have the potentiality of complete chaos and violence from that. When you have that lone wolf, crazy ass ideology, there we go again to that craziness. And when that individual actually opened fire on all those people in the bars and in that entertainment district, the people aren't allowed to have firearms in that area because they're serving alcohol and all that stuff. But do you think that crazy ass dude gave a shit about any of that? No, he didn't at all. So that made it a very soft target for him to go and hit. That's the things that they look for. And so
Captain?
don't make yourself a soft target.
Captain?
Don't put yourself in that position to be vulnerable and not be able to protect yourself or your family in the current environment that we're living in right now. Just be cognitive of the places that you're going to go, the things that you're going to do, and let the Spirit lead you. If you feel in your gut something ain't right tonight, it probably ain't right. You need to listen to that. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to Arnold, Kelly. I don't care who. Don't listen. But the Lord, that's who you need to listen to. So when people say, should I travel or should I go and do this or I got a trip planned, I would still continue with the trip if I was planning to do something, unless I felt the Spirit of the Lord said no. And if that's the case, it's over. I'm off. Done. And why? Because wherever I may be going, may be crazy, something happened there, but it may have nothing to do with where I'm at, what I'm doing, and I'm okay to still be wherever I'm going. And so I'm not going to live my life in fear, but the Lord will always lead you and guide you if you allow that. And that's what's so important right now is the discernment factor is like off the charts and that we need to start to follow it.
Captain?
And so
you started this by it was Benjamin Franklin was accredited to saying a republic if you can keep it. And I just
yes,
would like to read a little bit about that because it's really important right now.
yep,
Um, the statement was a response to a question from Elizabeth Willing Powell regarding what form of government the Constitutional Convention had produced on September 17, 1787 in Philadelphia. As Franklin, then 81, left the final session of the Constitutional Convention, Mrs. Powell asked, well, Doctor, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy? Franklin's response emphasized that the newly created United States was a republic, but its survival depended on the people's ability to maintain it. And that's how they got us. They put us to sleep and with all different methods until it was almost to the point where there was no going back. There was no getting that republic back. And what Q did was start to wake the Patriots up to say, like Captain said, we need the United States people or the patriots all over the world, not just in the United States, have to stand up, have to learn these things, and have to start educating other people. And it wasn't telling us anything. It was constantly asking questions so that we did our own research. We weren't told, we were asked to research. And that's what we always ask you all. We don't tell you what to do. When people ask us, what should we do? You have to research it yourself. And like Captain just end it with is use your God-given discernment. That is the most important thing because he will even lead you where to find it.
absolutely, 100%. And thanks for that because, like I said, a lot of times I'm just off the cuff and I don't have the exact, and it gives you the ability to pull up what I'm talking about to just reaffirm exactly what I'm talking about. And that's exactly where we're at, is we were put to sleep. They stole everything. And now it's about us waking up and taking that back. But in the process, it's about our spiritual awakening, which is the most important part, because with that, the discernment comes, as well as our direction. Because you have to understand something. Our forefathers were being directed by the Spirit to put together what they did, because you have to understand, we had a bunch of ragtag freaking people that was going up against the British monarchy and the British army, the military, which was basically the controller of the world. And for us to actually even have any kind of semblance of winning of that, that had to be led by God, period. The
Amen.
founding of this country had to be through God, nothing else, because it's like, going up against King Kong and being freaking a Barney. There's just no way it's going to happen unless he gives you the direction to win, and only that way. And that's where we've kind of led ourselves to today. So,
We have a question for Arnold, and they're asking, can we assume the war capability of the CCP? I believe she was fully committed to destroying them. And I think that's a good subject, because a lot of people think that, China, well, yeah, they're big mad because they're losing a lot of money, but that's the deep state, the CCP. So, yeah, Arnold, what do you think of that?
Oh, that's a very good question. We all know that she is part of the back door, the back channel that Trump has been working with to overthrow, as Captain so aptly put earlier, to overthrow the deep state, not only in their own countries, but on a global basis. That's the back channel, the back operations. But publicly, they still have to act as though we're the leaders of this communist country, blah, 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 blah. They're our enemy. But I believe, like what you just said, that, gosh, I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Let me make sure I'm coherent here. So can you ask the question again, Kelly? I'm sorry. I got so many.
It was about the CCP. So they asked, can we assume the war capability of the CCP? I believe she was fully committed to destroying them.
Yes, that's a good point. The war capability of the communist Chinese there is not what they've been talking about. It's not up to speed. Their capability is less than what they've been advertising. Let's put it like that. Even though they stole a lot of our secrets, other secrets from other countries militarily, and have built their military machine, it is no way, shape, or form comparable to what we have. But they like to talk about, the Communist Party like to talk about their capability, these ultra, sick fifth and sixth generation fighters and blah, 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 blah. That's all for show and tell. That's why Trump can very poignantly and very defiantly say, there's no military like our military on the planet. We have stuff that the Chinese, even the Russians, don't know that we have, or what we're capable of. And you see some of it put on display in Venezuela, some of it put on display in Iran. And they talked about that. The Department of War Secretary and Raising Cane talked about some of those capabilities. And General Kane said, when everything else is said and done, he's going to have the CENTCOM commander come on and brief the public what their capabilities were going into Iran. And it's going to shock a lot of people. So we have stuff that they know not of. But to make themselves look important on a global basis, on a global scale, yeah, they're going to say, well, yeah, we have this military and blah, 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 blah. But she is actually doing things behind the scenes, like cutting off the funding of money in different departments, firing some of the key Communist Party apparatchik that have been in power and leading the country astray. Because she is not, and it's going to be hard for people to understand this, he is not a communist. Matter of fact, if you understand anything about Xi, his family was murdered by the Red Communists. And so there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes. They have to have plausible deniability before their own communist party, if you will. Same thing that President Trump has here. When operations or things are happening, he's got to be in a position where he can plausibly deny having knowledge of said things or incidents or operations so he can keep the cover of the plan in full effect. I hope that makes sense. He's got to be in a position where, like when he came at him and said, "Hey, what about this QAnon movement that people are saying that they're against, satanic blood drinking pedophiles, cannibals?" He says, "You're right. There's no QAnon. There's Q and the Anons." And he told the truth when he was being interviewed by Savannah Guthrie. She kept pressing him on it. He says, "I don't know anything about QAnon, but is that a bad thing that they believe that?" So they have to do the same things in Russia and in China and other countries that supposedly publicly are adversaries, but secretly have been working with President Trump to bring down this deep state operation.
No, Captain left us.
Hey, and I can give you another 30 minutes, so 4 o'clock will be my absolute drop dead time.
Yeah, I think we were working on closing out. Captain's getting attacked, I think, because he keeps getting booted out of his own thing. And I don't know if you heard it, maybe not, but when you started talking about the pedophiles and that question that they asked, you started getting attacked. Yeah,
Yeah,
you were breaking up bad. So, it's a conversation that they don't really want us to have. But
right.
I think maybe we can wrap it up with just be careful because like that post was saying that I had read before, their only hope is for it's what the devil wants really is for you to be hopeless, right?
Right.
And there's so many great things that are happening now that can encourage you, and taking down this evil is part of it. And all they can do is send in their propaganda, paid. By the way, they're paid. And a good way to detect that is if you saw them like kind of drawing you in with the MAGA stuff and supporting Trump and then all of a sudden turned, no, I'm sorry, that doesn't happen. You don't all of a sudden do an about face. You have
Right.
to look for consistency. We've been here for many years. We've been talking the same things, we've been consistent in our beliefs for many, many years. When you see something turn around like that, somebody's offered them a paycheck. That's my opinion. And they were too greedy to say no. And once you accept that paycheck, you say what you're told, right?
Right.
The
Yeah,
narrative.
right. That's right. That is so true. It's it's an amazing thing. I wanted to add that to the conversation is that as Captain and you guys talked about, this is a spiritual war as well. And through the ages, God has always had a remnant to himself. No matter how bad things gotten, no matter how worse things people see throughout the course of history, God always worked through a remnant of people that didn't bend their knee, that kept the faith through all kind of adversity that was thrown at them. And I thank God for you guys and as well as others that have kept the faith, have not bent their knee to our adversary, haven't compromised, as you said, but we remain consistent in bringing the truth and the information to the people. And that's all God needed. All he needed was a remnant. And now we've seen that remnant has grown exponentially on a global basis. That whole multitudes of patriots in all the different countries, as you pointed out earlier, Kelly, and all the different countries are rising up, looking to America as the leader, because we were devoid of leadership, not just in our own country, but around the globe. True leadership that can lead us out of the mess that the deep state had put us in. Now they're looking to the U.S. as the leader, President Trump as the figurehead of leadership that they can trust in, because he's proven his worth. He's been through hell and high water times 10. And
Yes.
the people have seen that he's come through, and every place of adversity, he's come through more consistent, more steadfast, more resolute. And he's seeing what he's bringing to the table. We're not going in of saving these countries for our own purposes. Trump may troll and act like to the deep state that he's doing that, but that's the farthest thing in the world that he wants to do. He's bringing freedom and inviting the people of those countries to join in their freedom. And then he said, hey, we're going to work with you so you become that sovereign, prosperous nation that I've always intended, that this plan is always intended for, and that I discussed in the UN briefing or the UN speech that he gave in his first term. He said every country has to become its own sovereign nation and to put them on a level playing field globally to compete with the other nations. That's important. We're going to do it here in the U.S., and that was his desire for other countries as well. So I'll just drop there.
Yeah, and he's never changed his messaging either. I mean, you can go way back to the 80s, seeing him being interviewed about Iran. He has always had this opinion. His messaging has always been the same. It's not like, oh, all of a sudden, like, the propagandists are trying to spin, oh, he changed his course after we voted. No. If you followed him close enough, which you should be, when you are voting a leader in, get to know them. Get to know them. Watch them. Watch their messaging, that it stays the same. His messaging has always stayed the same. He's
Right,
being true to his beliefs. Is he human and imperfect? Yes. But he is fighting for we the people, and he is trying to hand over that power to us, and we have to be prepared to accept it,
right,
because it's a
right,
big role. It's a big responsibility. And if you want freedom, you have to be willing to accept that role and responsibility.
right. Very, very well put. Very well put. And that's why the focus of Q was on Trump. And I mentioned before, way before he started to run for office or made the acknowledgement he was going to run in 2015 is when he made the announcement. He was already, and he says this. There's a couple of video clips where he talks about how he was approached by the military and asked to run for the presidency. And he
Mhm.
mentions the Marine Corps general, whose name escapes my mind right now, and a three-star lieutenant general, Army lieutenant general, had approached him at a banquet of some sort, and they asked him, would you consider running for the presidency? And he said that's where he made his decision, because now times before that, and like you said, Kelly, he's always been consistent about how we've been ripped off by other foreign countries, that there's a cabal, if you will, that was trying to do things to our country, unacceptable. He's always been consistent.
And all the
So yeah,
restrictions, I mean, he just talked about it today in the energy meeting, about how the people that are creating the AI couldn't believe he was going to allow them to create energy, because nobody would the government, the cabal would never give that control over to
right,
anyone, right? I mean, come on. He's been talking about this forever, and he's doing exactly what he's told you he's going to do. So
yes,
that's what I look at. I've known this man for a long time. I've studied him, and he stays consistent.
yes, yes. And he doesn't back down. He'll tell you to your face the truth. And that's what a lot of people can't handle, even those who are not deep state assets. Just people on our side of the coin. They don't like, well, he's kind of uncouth and the language he's using. I said, yeah, because he's the tip of the spear. He has to be that way. That's why he was selected. He's showing people, hey, I made a promise that I'm keeping. I'm not backing down from it. Nothing you say, do, or do to me or my family is going to make me relent, because his family's been attacked like nobody's business as well. But all this stuff that's happened is because he's under mandate. I believe he's under mandate by God to accomplish what he's doing. And God has set him up with people to surround him to help him in effort. People like you and I as well at this level to support his efforts, pray for him, cover him in prayer and his family, and then take part of what's being prepared, what's been prepared for us. So it's a great thing. And I would be remiss if I didn't say this. God bless all the people on the front lines that have sacrificed and paid the ultimate price to bring us to where we are today. I am so thankful. Some of the people that I worked with, I've lost in this fight that I personally knew. But the biggest thing is, like you said this earlier, Kelly, they have given themselves for this cause knowingly and willingly, and are prepared to pay the ultimate price to make sure freedom and justice comes back to not only our country, but to other countries as well. And the red line for many of us, and you've told me this yourself, and I know you guys have been this way since I've known you. The red line for all of us is what they've been doing to our children, because it's all connected. Don't think for one moment that it's not. Everything that we see happening today with Iran, with Venezuela, with Ukraine, it's all connected, because the same names are connected to a lot of these incidents that cross over different platforms and different instances, but it's all centered around what they've been doing to our children. I mean, there are other innocent folks as well, like the young ladies that Epstein abused, but the children at the core of this, it's always been around the children in some way, shape, or form. You're going to see that connective tissue, and that's why this is so important that we don't lose focus, that we set our faces like flint, as the Bible says. We gird up our loins. We become steadfast and immovable, because we know God, or for people who don't believe in God, providence, or whatever you want to call it, is in the process of exposing all this evil that we've been under for such a long period of time, well, since Adam's fall. But that's very, very important to me. I know it's very important to you, Kelly, and to the captain, that we don't lose faith, we don't lose heart, we band together, we encourage one another, because everybody has a part to play. Doesn't matter how insignificant you may think you don't have a part you don't have. Every part, whatever it is, big or small, is important to the movement, because you don't know how many people that you actually touch by just making a comment or saying something, how you bring encouragement and peace, which is very important to the people involved in this great movement we're seeing today. So I just wanted to share that.
Well, that's a great place to end this. Captain has messaged me. He said that he's been switching back and forth between his internet, and it keeps going down, so he can't get back on. And we have so enjoyed this conversation. And he asked me also if you could come back, Arnold, again, so that we can continue, because it's just been, we've talked about this. You and I have had this connection since like the very first day we talked, right?
Right.
And it's just something special, and I love to share it with everyone, because there is when everybody connects and everybody gets to be within a certain understanding, there is no stopping us. None. And all God's children will be saved, which is
Amen.
why most of us are here. So I'll leave it with that. Thank you so much, Arnold. Thank you, everyone, for coming and spending the time with us, both on Rumble and all the other places we're streaming, Telegram and X. We love you all, and we wish you a great rest of the day. And thank
Amen.
you again, Arnold.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. God bless you.
Okay.
Love you guys.
Love you too. Good night, or good day.
Okay. Bye
Gotta
bye.
figure out how to close this down now. All right. I think I know how.